it's great to be able to learn from other people and see, okay, well, in this market or this specific niche, it's a little bit different. And how are you going to make that change? But one of the biggest challenges people have is, who am I going to follow? There's so much information out there on the internet, and you can learn a lot of this stuff for free. And the intention is not to create some $50,000 or $60,000 expensive program for people to join, even though all the value would be there. But it's really, how can we bring people in, have them committed to being able to move forward and do something, and then actually have a path towards getting deals done? Because in this space, as you know, it's a team sport.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss, as always, leading you on this journey. And today with me, I have a special guest, Steven Pesavento. It's great to have you here. Just to guys, give you a little bit of context, he is the host of an incredible podcast called the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet and checked it out, go ahead and do that after you finish listening to this episode, obviously. Check it out, and we'll put it in the show notes as well. He is the founder, of VonFinch Capital. So real estate, multifamily investor, and he's doing a lot of amazing things. Love to get to know you a little better on this show today, Steven. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing amazing. I'm excited to be here. Loved what you've been doing out in the world, and excited to share a couple things about what we've been up to.
No, it is exciting. I mean, what would you say is the most exciting thing that you're working on right now?
The most exciting thing, well, I'd say the most exciting thing is I just got back from 20 days in Hawaii. But as far as what I'm working on, I mean, we've got some incredible projects coming down the pipeline for VonFinch Capital. And we just finished up another cohort with the multifamily MBA, an accelerator, which is teaching operators in detail a specific way of going out and syndicating multifamily, and then having an opportunity to partner with different mentors that are part of the program.
Well, that's cool. So tell me a little more about that. I'm curious. The multifamily MBA, like Masters of Business Administration, right? The MBA, not the basketball league. So what is that about? I mean, it sounds like a coaching program. It's an accelerator. How would you describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the intention behind the multifamily MBA, of course, you're not going to get an official MBA if you're looking to get some kind of official certificate. You're not in the right place. But the real intention is to be able to give people the tactical strategies that they need to understand in order to go and acquire syndicated multifamily. After flipping over 200 houses, after having a very successful business on the single family front, I went and started heading into multifamily. And what I realized is that there is some great programs and some great mentors out there, but I wasn't finding the path towards how can I learn this stuff? And then who can I actually partner with directly to be able to get deals done right away? And what I found was that there was a missing piece of how you actually operate these deals. And so I ended up connecting with my partner, Reed Goosens. He's got over, going on 3,000 units in Austin, Texas. So you can imagine it's a pretty large portfolio that he directly controls. And members that join this program, they really get to understand how to go find deals, how to operate deals, how to fund those deals, and then, of course, how to work on a platform to be able to build investors. But I think the coolest thing is that the real intention is to build community, because one of the things that I found that is most valuable about when you're making any kind of transition is to surround yourself with other people who are where you want to go and who are also on the same path of where you want to go. Right. And so what we've really done is just bring together a small group of people who are really committed to going out and doing that, and then partnering together to go and be able to get deals done. And awesome. So what's really cool is just, from the members that have participated in our program, over half of them have gotten a deal done within those 12 weeks. And obviously there's no guarantee of what someone's actions are going to be, but it's amazing to see the results of when you work from a very specific set of strategies right. and tactics, and then you actually take action and you have the support of other people who've been down that path to be able to help you navigate it more effectively. how much better the results have been. And
That's
so,
incredible.
I myself, I'm not some big multifamily operator, right? I've had a lot of success and I've raised some significant capital, but I look at myself as a student alongside so many of these members, working and learning from other great people that we get to bring onto the program.
That's awesome. So that you're bringing in other mentors or other coaches along with you guys in this program as well, so they'll be able to learn from others. Is that how?
Yeah, exactly. Bring in other people.
Gotcha.
Of course, Reed Goossens has extensive track record of experience, and he's really able to kind of share exactly how he's been able to do that. But then it's great to be able to learn from other people and see, okay, well, in this market or this specific niche, it's a little bit different. And how are you going to make that change? But one of the biggest challenges people have is, who am I going to follow? There's so much information out there on the internet, and you can learn a lot of this stuff for free. And the intention is not to create some $50,000 or $60,000 expensive program for people to join, even though all the value would be there. But it's really, how can we bring people in, have them committed to being able to move forward and do something, and then actually have a path towards getting deals done? Because in this space, as you know, it's a team sport, and I can't do everything on my own, nor would I want to. Right. I love talking to people and connecting and working with investors and explaining difficult, complex topics in a way that almost everyone will understand. But I don't like diving into the numbers and working through all the little details.
Right.
But thankfully, I'm able to hire people onto my team who can do that and partner with other people who are really good at that. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah, very much so. I was just thinking, I'm the same exact way. And that's what's incredible about this industry, is that, like you said, it's a team sport. If you find the right partners, the right people to take down deals with, you can accomplish so much more than if you would just figure it out on your own. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they maybe learn stuff on the internet or they're on YouTube or they're watching this and think that they have to do everything on their own and get stuck. Whereas single families, and I'm sure you can relate to this because you had extensive experience in single families, you could do a lot of that on your own. I mean, you got to find the right contractor, you got to find the right, partners, things like that. But essentially a lot of that business is done on an individual basis, whereas multifamily is a whole different animal.
It is. It's totally different, right? We flipped over 200 houses in my company before we ended up exiting that portfolio. And, we had built a significant team and we're sending, 100,000 mailers or more a month. We were doing significant marketing to go direct to seller and have a lot of experience in understanding how to run a business like that and go generate leads. But it's a very different business to then move into multifamily because it's a much longer process. It's something that it takes longer to get that deal. The upside, it takes a little bit longer to realize. But what's great about it is the upside is much more significant and things can really compound. And so if you're a passive investor, it's great because you get to leverage other experts' experience to go out there and execute on your behalf. If you're an operator, it's great because by going and getting these larger properties, as you build your organization, things really start to compound. And all of those deals do better as you continue to scale your organization and operation. So it's kind of a win-win across the board. And that's one of the biggest reasons that we stepped away from something that we were very good at in order to step into something that was really going to build a business that was going to be really a fit, for what we envision the future to be like. And frankly, wanting to work with clients and customers and partners that all have the same mindset. Because, as you mentioned, I run a podcast called The Investor Mindset. And
right.
One of the things that's most important to me in life is being surrounded by other people who are driven to go and do amazing things and who believe that there's more to life and who believe that they can create a life by their design. And what I found was in the single family space, there's a lot of people who have that belief, but it's small. And there's a lot of customers and clients that I was working with who didn't have that belief and who were really not even open to the idea of growing as an individual. And so what's so cool about multifamily is that it really attracts people both on the passive side, as well as the operator side, as well as the vendor side, all people who are driven to create a better life. And so I'm on this mission to help people live a better life every day and to be able to create life on their terms. And, multifamily is just one of the ways that we're doing that.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And I mean, the fact that you have a podcast that really speaks to that, like you said, the investor mindset, and it really does all come back to mindset. Everything has to do with that. And I love the fact that you bring on some really top guests. I mean, it's not just your ordinary that I've seen in the multifamily space. You got tons of shows that they all have pretty much the same guests on there. And I like that Weiss Advice is a little bit different, that we have kind of people from all walks of life, but what I love about your show is that you literally bring on like some top rated people there, and successful people have the right mindset. So it can translate if you use some of those skills that they're talking about or whatever it is, you can translate that into multifamily business, into really anything from an investor standpoint. I think the first time the first time I came across you and your show was an interview you did with Chris Voss, right? I had just finished the book, Never Split the Difference, which had come recommended from LinkedIn or from some other people. It's, a popular book, and I listened to it, the audiobook. And then I was scrolling through, LinkedIn, I think, or Facebook, and one of the groups, and there was like, hey, this Chris, I just listened. So I got to listen to him and heard your episode with him, which is awesome. Anyone should go check out that episode, because he did this really cool thing, like negotiation tactic, like 60 seconds or you're dead or something like that, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah. So go on to YouTube or go on to Google and search Chris Voss 60 seconds or she dies. And
right.
We did a direct 1-to-1 competition experiment, if you will, negotiating using this strategy of, hey, he's the hostage negotiator, I'm the hostage taker, and he's got 60 seconds to save the hostage. And then we reverse roles. And I will tell you, we made that up right before we recorded. I highly recommend you go and listen to it. It's one of the top listened to episodes on our channel. And because it was really fun. But I got annihilated, and I knew I was going to. And I've read his book like 15 times. I love the content that he's put out, and I definitely have trained my team around using some of those strategies because they're great for just more effective communication. But you can see, if you watch the video, there's an emotional breakdown based on some of the strategies that he's using, where he actually can essentially turn off your brain from operating and thinking in the right way. He talks about it a little bit. It was definitely a lot of fun, but a lot of great episodes. But I think the thing at the end of the day that I've learned after doing all those episodes, I put together this piece called The 5 Principles of Success. And it was after interviewing all these people. And one of those main things was that they always look at challenge as an opportunity. So while I was negotiating against Chris Voss and while I was getting my butt kicked, I knew that it was going to happen. But I also knew that I have a real big opportunity to learn a lot, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And that ended up definitely launching the show into a whole nother stratosphere. I mean, of course, we're a top rated podcast, and we're on the top of a lot of lists, but it's just really fun being able to negotiate against somebody that has been one of my education heroes. I just really appreciate the kind of work that he's put out.
Sure. Absolutely. What would you say, if you could, and I know it's a difficult thing because I couldn't answer this question, honestly, but I'll put it on you. What if you could pick, your favorite episode, or maybe a favorite interaction, or just something that kind of pops in your mind first when I say that, of the episodes that you've done so far?
I think that, we just talked about it. We just talked about one of my favorite episodes because I just had looked up to Chris for so long. But we recently released an episode with Mark Manson, the author of Subtle Art of Not Giving Up. And it's a phenomenal book, which is really, it's a twist, because it's actually all about the idea of caring about the right things. And so it kind of hooks people in with this catchy title. But it was great talking to him because he's just a real genuine guy. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things you'll find in all the episodes, whether I'm talking with Joe Fairless, whether I'm talking with, Bill Allen, a house flipper, whether I'm talking with Rod Khleif, a multifamily investor. Regardless of who I'm talking with, what we're diving into is understanding how successful people think, because mindset, the way that I define it, it's the thoughts and beliefs that end up leading directly the actions that you take in your life, and therefore the outcomes that you experience, what actually happens out in the world. So when you come at it from that perspective and you start understanding how successful people think, you can then start applying those same thoughts and beliefs in your own life and start seeing some of those same results. So perfect example, when I got started in real estate, I had no experience. I didn't know anything about real estate other than I had a lot of interest. When I was a kid, I wanted to be one of two things. I wanted to be a chef like Emeril Lagasse, or I wanted to renovate houses and create my own financial freedom through real estate like Bob Vila. And it took me a long time before I finally took that step. But at the time, I didn't believe that I could do it. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have anyone in my family that had a lot of money that was going to be funneling into my business. And I thought that that's was something that I need. So I had this belief that was holding me back. It stopped me from making that move forward. Well, so many other people have those same beliefs, whether it's a passive investor sitting on the fence, wondering to themselves, is this the deal that I'm going to get into? Whether it's that active operator who wants to get into the game, but is afraid of spending a little bit of money on education, or even spending a little bit of money to on risk capital to sign that contract and go under contract on a multifamily deal because you don't know what you don't know. Right. But the most valuable thing is that once you dive in, once you make that decision, once you move forward, and then you surround yourself with community of people who are driven to go in that right direction, then you can start seeing the support and you start seeing other examples. You start actually believing that it's possible because you take someone else's belief. They believe it's possible. They're currently running the business. You're able to model that, and then you're able to apply it within your own business. So all of this stuff for me, all this success really came from a place of really desiring to kind of go in this direction. And then fortunately deciding when I was in a confident state, when I was in a good state, ready to move forward, to surround myself with some other people who are actively and actionably doing this stuff. Because, without getting into that place, without making the decision to move forward, and then having one of those actions be, how can I learn and surround myself with other people that are doing this, that I would have never moved forward. And the same is true when it came to the podcast game. For those people who are interested, I had wanted to do a podcast since probably 2013, 2014, when I first heard Tim Ferriss. I thought, man, this guy is asking all these questions. I want to ask those questions. I love having these conversations. But I had beliefs that were holding me back from doing it. It wasn't until, I don't even know, maybe it was 2018, but I made a decision. And one of the following steps of those decisions was to get in a community of other people who were taking that action. And it seemed simple then, because when you surround yourself with other people who are doing it, then you know what steps need to get taken and you can actually start moving forward.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's so important and shouldn't be overlooked to any extent, the importance of community, the importance of surrounding yourself with those people that have already forged the path to where you want to get to. You never, ever, ever have to reinvent the wheel, especially nowadays. I mean, there's so much available and so much, the fact that the world has been brought together so much closer through the internet and through social media and through the incredible connections that we have. I mean, think about it. Like, you would 5-10 years ago, it would be impossible, or 20 years ago, it'd be impossible to get an interview with like some of the top rated, people in the world, because there weren't, you'd have to travel to where they're at, and you'd have to, book a hotel or whatever it would be, a recording studio. You can do so much from the comfort of your home. And I think people think that there's so much that needs to go into starting a business, and there is, but having a community of people who have done it before you is paramount. I mean, it's so important.
There's a ton of things that go into starting a business, but one of the other cool things is, along that same line, like our ability to go and purchase commercial multifamily in different states around the country, it wasn't as accessible because information wasn't as accessible. Mm-hmm. Like, one of the big advantages that our operating partners and that we have when we're going and purchasing property in another state is that, we are typically working with and have people on the ground who are executing in that local area. And so they know that local market and they have that knowledge. But even without having that local knowledge, 20 years ago, you had to be able to walk the property and see exactly what was going on. Now, today, there's so much information that has been widely compiled. You can either pay for or is available through some type of service, or you can work with other people and partners and, video connect and all these things. Our ability to go and purchase in markets that have a better ROI and a better return is absolutely huge. And it's the same when it comes to investing passively, right? Like, for the longest time, these kind of investments were reserved for the richest families and wealthiest companies. And there's a reason for that. Well, one is because it's a complex market and the government really didn't believe that normal, regular, everyday people could make these kind of decisions. And I don't mean normal, everyday people as people who are, working at Kentucky Fried Chicken making $20,000 a year. I just mean anybody who is not an expert in real estate or in capital markets weren't really able to invest in these type of deals. And we're seeing so much more growth in this space as a result of access to information. And so it's cool because what that means is that now we can all start benefiting from some of the same upside that usually reserved for the ultra rich.
100%. It's, it's a kind of converging of worlds is what it is. It's, you said, I think the data that's available really brings people together. So that there's so much to be learned. There's so much to do, but I think taking action is a result of having the right mindset. And it all really comes back to that. I mean, thought, speech, action. We talk about this a lot on the podcast. There's different levels of, how we are involved in the world, and our actions are really important. Our speech is extremely important, but it all starts with our thoughts and our mindset. And if you have that in the right place, then it will translate through and hopefully get you to the right place.
Yeah. It's so true.
I want to, want to segue. I feel like the time flies by every time we do this, but I want to segue into the final part of our show where we call the Final Four. We ask all of our guests 4 questions. Take this however you want. But the first question is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
What is the worst job that I ever had? It's such a good question. And when I think back, it's hard to say worse, but there is a couple, right? I worked in kitchens from when I was 14 to 20. Like I said, I wanted to be a chef until I realized that it wasn't in alignment with the kind of lifestyle that I wanted to create. And so although I was able to find a flow state, although I loved cooking and loved creating, one of the things that I noticed and that made it one of the worst was when I was working at a company called Perkins. It's like IHOP. It's a breakfast chain in the Midwest. And what made it the worst was that it was just a very dirty kitchen. And one of the things as a cook, one of the biggest things that you spend a lot of your time doing is you spend a lot of your time cleaning, right? You're always cleaning. Everything's cleaning. And so if I was to look back, out of any of the jobs, even though I loved cooking, that was probably the worst.
That's I can relate to that a lot. I love cooking too, believe it or not. And, but I don't like cleaning so much. Actually, in college, when I first started cooking, like just for myself, I had living on my own for the first time. I cooked at home, but I had a roommate and I made a deal with him that I do all the cooking if he did all the dishes. And it didn't work out so well for that long because he hated doing dishes, but he liked eating the food that I made. So whatever, we made it work, but I can totally relate to that. Second question for you, Stephen. What is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah. So when I hear this question, it's hard to point to just one book because we talked about Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. That was a big paradigm shift. Of course, you always hear about Robert Kiyosaki and his book that made such a big difference for so many people because it changed the way they think about things. But for me, there was a book called Awaken the Giant Within from Tony Robbins that was written back in, I want to say the 80s, maybe early 90s. And that book was a game changer for me because I was at a point where I was a real big believer in, growth and always learning and looking to grow and to change. And when I listened to it, I had just listened to an episode where Tim Ferriss was interviewing Tony Robbins. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to dive into this. It's time that I find a copy and I listened to it. And what really opened my mind was just realizing that, again, it was putting language to something that I had known for so long. And the idea that like we can change our circumstances by simply focusing on the right things. And so it's been a big influence. That book was probably an opener for me.
Wow. Yeah. He has a way of putting things that's for sure that kind of inspire people. Definitely put that one on the reading list, Awaken the Giant Within. And we'll put it in the show notes for sure for all of our listeners to check that one out. What is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Yeah. What's a skill or talent that I'd like to learn? Well, on the personal side this past year we were on lockdown, so I didn't have as much time there, but I've been spending the last couple of years learning the salsa dance. So it's been something that I've gotten quite good at, definitely enjoy it, want to be able to take that to a whole nother level. But on the business front, what I really am excited about the idea is learning how to tell even better stories. Because what I found is that people learn best through storytelling. People remember the most through storytelling. So it's something that I want to become even better at, is understanding how can you effectively craft a story that has lessons, and those lessons end up leading to making change in people's life, because I'm truly committed to being able to impact thousands, if not millions of people to create a better life. And real estate just happens to be one of the paths that I'm personally on to get there. And,
Right.
as I was mentioning before, there's these 5 principles that I realized when it comes to making a more successful life that all the successful people have. And if people are interested in getting the rest of those 5, we talked about 2 of them here, they can just head over to the investormindset.com/principles. And you can get a copy of that. I'm sure you'll include that in the show notes for people as well.
Absolutely, for sure. I'm very curious myself to find out what those other principles are. But that's so important. Storytelling. I would venture to say. I mean, do you do solo episodes on your podcast, or are they all interview style?
I do. Yeah. I've done 100 plus interviews, and I've done almost nearly that many solo episodes. So
Awesome.
I do a blend of the 2.
Awesome. Okay. Good to know. I've tried out some solo episodes here on Weiss Advice, and for some reason they haven't gone so far. But if you're listening to this and you want me to put more solo episodes, let me know. Otherwise, I would say storytelling would probably be extremely helpful to kind of give.
It's helpful no matter where you're talking to people, even if you're having a one-on-one conversation, right? Because like life is stories. Like when you're going to share anything with somebody, it's all about the story. For example, I have, a phenomenal deal that we're working on, and the story behind it is so compelling. It incorporates all these different factors that people are interested in. And because of those factors, they want to learn more. If I was just saying, hey, I've got this deal and it's got this return, it's in this market, it's a pretty weak story. But if I talk about the impact that's being created as a result of this investment and how these incredible investors came together with one mission in mind in order to support this nonprofit. And as a result of that, we're going to be able to make this kind of change happen in the world. And, the return profile is really strong, but we're really doing something that's different than anyone else has done. All of a sudden, people are interested. They want to learn more. And if you do want to learn more, you can just reach out directly to me, right? And so that's just a good example about how you can use stories. You're telling the exact thing that's true, but you're telling it in a way that actually draws people in because you've accentuated the most important factors or facts.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent point. Love that. So 4th and final question is, what does success mean to you?
Success to me is living a fulfilled life and being able to make an impact on other people. So for me, it really starts with living a life by my design, being able to invest my time in ways that are going to then be able to pay off in the long term, both from an impact perspective as well as an income. So everything I'm doing, I'm really thinking, how can I influence somebody else to make some kind of change in their life? Even if I never hear about it, I have the feeling that a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is making that kind of impact because people are reaching out. So I know I'm successful when I'm doing activity that's going to be able to push that mission forward. So for me, when I was a kid, growing up, have some amazing parents, but, was the son of the oldest of 4 kids from a pretty rocky divorce. And there was one subject that was always extremely painful, and it was money. And so money was this obsession for me. How can I make it? How can I create it? How can I make sure that I never live with that kind of pain that we were experiencing, and all the fighting and all the things that go along with that? I'm sure some of the listeners can relate to that. But for me, once I started making that kind of money and I started, got that first salary, was making more than my parents, doubled that, with every job that I took. And then of course got into real estate and was creating, massive amounts of income. What I realized is that without that intention, without that fulfillment, without that impact, it was exactly the same kind of scenario we're talking about. Definitely better to have money than not, but success is so much more than that, I found.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know how to use the money or, how it's going to make you feel, that it doesn't matter how much you have, because you can be very content with a very little amount of money. I mean, I know people who live in kind of a tiny little 1-room house and are, for all intents and purposes, impoverished, but are some of the happiest people that I've ever met. And on the flip side, I'm sure we've all heard of people who are, millionaires or billionaires and are miserable and have, challenges with drug abuse and all kinds of other horrible things that maybe it's a result, it's probably a result of the money, but I think even more so, it's a result of the lack of awareness or the lack of mindset, how to use it.
I think it's not the money. Money is usually the culprit that people like to blame their problems on. And that's kind of what I was trying to outline, is that I had thought that money was the problem. The problem wasn't money. The
Right.
problem was the problems that were going on within the household and within family
Yeah.
issues that so many people deal with. But money's an easy target to blame. But try living without having money. You can't do that much. Try having an impact in the world without having any money. Your impact is most likely going to be much smaller versus if you had billions of dollars and you had that same focus of focusing on impact in the world. You're going to be able to make a bigger impact with more money. And so the idea is money is critical. We want to make a lot of it. We want to make a huge result in that financial category, but we also want to do so in a way where we're also finding fulfillment for ourselves intentionally and being able to do the things that matter most to us, right? Not getting rich in spite of living life, but getting rich so that we can live an even more enriched life.
100%. Yeah, love that. It's an amplifier is really what it is. But you can definitely do more in the world if you have more of that. That's for sure. So Stephen, it's been a pleasure. I mean, you already mentioned this earlier on, but where can our listeners reach you or find you?
Well, it was great talking with you guys. Of course, VonFinch Capital, we have, new deals rolling out quite often. I definitely encourage you to head over to stephenpesavento.com. There's a lot of information. You can get access to our podcast there. You can find out what I'm up to personally. But I encourage you, if you listen to this episode, you found it at all valuable, you enjoyed what we said, definitely head over and hit that subscribe button on the podcast, but shoot me a personal DM on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you love to connect with people, and let me know. Just would love to know that you're a listener, and it's been great serving you guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. It's been very eye-opening, and I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank you again. And to our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.